Hello, Mark.
Yeah. Just made it. Whew.
Nice and early. Perfect.
I tried. I wanted to be earlier, but there we go.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Right on time. I've literally just turned on my camera. I'm going to say a big welcome to everyone who's already joined us. And
Okay.
that looks like close to 100 people already. We had about 500 registrations. So we're very, very excited for you to be with us for what's definitely my first ever tech huddle. Hello, Rafiwe.
Hey,
Yeah.
how's it?
Hi, Rafiwe.
You're looking
Hi.
good. I like
Hey,
the
guys.
outfit, the color, and the background. Very, very mindful setup there that you've got.
Rafiwe and I are used to lots of tech huddles. We do them often, don't we, Rafiwe?
I know it's starting to feel like a paddle.
A tech puddle.
I take paddle too much.
You're looking good.
Thank
So,
you.
Are you at the ranch?
Yeah,
Oh, wonderful.
my house is a zoo.
Yeah, no, just to get some space, eh?
a zoo or a Zoom? My house is a Zoom.
A zoo. A Zoom. Yeah, that's a good one.
No, my house is it doubles up. It's an office, it's a home, it's a school, it's also a film studio at the moment. So yeah.
All of our homes, I think, have become multi-purpose studios, offices, playrooms, everything, yoga rooms.
Yeah, absolutely. A dance studio as well. And I mean, my wife and I was filming some instructional videos, and the only really cool place I could get an angle was in my kitchen. So my son and my wife are trying to make lunch while I've got a tripod set up with lights, and it's like in the kitchen. I mean, it's ridiculous, really. Anyway, that's lockdown life, isn't it?
Okay, just quickly testing. You guys can hear me well.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so a big warm welcome very warm welcome probably to Marion joining us from Banana Country in Durban. Isabel is in Midrand. We've got Khaukhelo in South Africa. Welcome to you. You're welcome to be a bit more specific and let us know where about in South Africa you are. Welcome to Leonie Fantonda. Good to see you on the call. Tuning in from Kensington. Welcome Mpo from Gaborone in Botswana. Just over the border, we've got Lydia in Lone Hill. We've got Khaukhelo is more specifically in Katlehong. We've got Rory who's here. We've got Amanda from Sea Point. Lydia also in Lone Hill. Sam on the West Rand. Guys, this is amazing. There's lots and lots of comments coming through. We even have Etienne joining us from Toronto. So what you can do, if you want, is you can post messages to all panelists and attendees, like Liani Baz has posted that to all panelists and attendees. So the clock is about to wind down. Yeah, we're going to be mindful of time, aren't we, Mark and Rafiwe?
Yes, of course. That's one of the most important things to be mindful of. It's also an act of kindfulness. You know, we have this word that I don't know. I think maybe we made it up. It's like mindfulness and kindness, and you call it kindfulness. So it's by being mindful, we're actually being kind to each other as well, aren't we?
I love it. That's great. First lesson of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so welcome to everybody who has joined us. I see those numbers are still going up. Maybe we should give it another half a minute or so just for people to join in, because it is 1 o'clock on the nose here in South Africa. I personally am very, very excited for this session. I think people over the last 4 months have experienced extreme technology overwhelm, Zoom fatigue. There's that Yiddish word, that new Yiddish word that's been added to the dictionary, uitgezoomd. And I personally have felt the effects of being online, for so
Okay.
many hours straight, so many days straight, life and work blending in at home. So I think it's a very, very important conversation, and I'm grateful for the collaboration with Mark and Rafilwe and the team at Mindful Revolution. So yeah, a big warm welcome to Mark and to Rafilwe, and yeah, thanks for this opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
It's wonderful to be there. I feel like Mark is already overtaking and not minding his virtual manners. He's trying to speak when I'm speaking. Mark, please wait your turn.
Ladies first. Sorry.
Thank you, all of us, for joining. All of you, rather, for joining us. It's been quite an interesting time in history, an interesting time in all of our lives. And Dan did mention that there's a lot of exhaustion that we're all experiencing, and different things, you know, emotionally, physically, we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling tired, and sometimes we're even feeling good. So it's not just the negative stuff that we can focus on, as the world in so many ways has come closer together and we feel far apart still. So that's an interesting thing to face. You know, Dan, you spoke about the exhaustion, and there's an interesting tweet that Dr. Stoffel shared with me. Dr. Stoffel is our Mindful Revolution mental health advisor. And this was a tweet written by Gian Piero Petriglieri, and he's an associate professor of organizational behavior at the renowned INSEAD Business School. And he says that I spoke to an old therapist friend of mine today, and I finally understand why everyone is so exhausted after the video calls. It's the plausible deniability of each other's absence. Our minds tricked into the idea of being together when our bodies feel that we are not. Dissonance is exhausting. And it's either being in each other's presence or being in each other's absence than in the constant presence of each other's absence. Our bodies process so much in context, so much information in encounters, that meeting on video is being a weird kind of blindfolded. We sense too little and we can't imagine enough. And that signal deprivation requires a lot of conscious effort. And, you know, what I appreciated so much about that is that, you know, being able to name your emotions and name your thoughts accurately, it makes us not only powerful, but it makes us resilient, because when we're dealing with the effects, we know what we're actually dealing with. So I'm really looking forward to unfolding this conversation as we navigate the virtual space. We already had a little interesting conversation earlier where we didn't realize, Mark and I, that Dan was actually in Joburg. We thought that he was in Cape Town and he thought that we were in Cape Town. So, you know, already there's a disconnect because, you know, there's so much that we don't know because we meet on video. And add to the virtual space that we now find ourselves having to operate in, we have load shedding, you know, which is just amplified our anxiety, and it's amplified what we're already having to deal with lockdown. And until we get parole from what feels like a prison sentence, we're going to have to find ways to navigate not just technology, but to navigate ourselves as we walk through these this jungle of virtual reality. And so we're interested to hear, and maybe you can share in the chat session, what are some of the challenges that you have been experiencing? So I'm not asking Dan, I'm not asking Mark, I'm also asking the rest of you, so our audience, what are some of the challenges that you have experienced? And as you start to feed that into us, I would like to hand over to Dan for, I mean, we know you've introduced yourselves, but can you share some of the challenges that you are experiencing? You spend a lot of time virtually. Mark and I refer to you as the virtual celebrity. So you know a lot, and we'd love if you can share your experiences, more particularly the challenges that you experience on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Rafilwe. Yeah, so look, I don't think I'm an expert in the space, and I think we're all just kind of navigating and trying to keep up and trying to balance and calibrate and recalibrate, and that's been a real challenge for me because I think just the unique position that I've personally been in over the past few months is such that I had a head start on Zoom. I mean, I had a Zoom webinar license for the last 3 years, so that's given me so much experience with Zoom and with webinars and with this whole space. And it's put me in a unique position where there's a lot of demand because all these organizations, want to move their events online. So yeah, it's put me in a position of trying to grapple with a lot of demand, a lot of messages, a lot of calls, a lot of Zooms, and I've had to try and navigate that. And I think it's been a huge challenge because it is exhausting. I woke up this morning, I've got a serious spasm in my neck, and I might have just not slept well, or maybe it's linked to the Zoom neck, maybe just like really being online so many hours a day. And we were chatting this morning, the three of us, and we're just talking about, I think, typically pre-COVID, when we would structure our day and we would have that time in between to go from a meeting to another meeting, where we'd go for a walk down the corridor or get into a car, or sometimes onto my Vespa. But there would be those breaks inherently built into the day, and I think now it's so easy to just go into these back-to-back Zooms, and sometimes even if you leave yourself a 15-minute break, you'll end up going overtime in the previous meeting and then straight from the one Zoom to the next Teams to the next Skype, and it just becomes quite overwhelming. So I think some of my best days or best moments are when I build in that time and stick to that time of me time and break time. Go outside, take a few deep breaths, take a walk, stretch, leave my phone, leave the screens for an hour. I had that success yesterday. It really felt great to have that break for an hour. And yeah, as I say, look, I can't preach and as if I'm doing it perfectly. I don't have it all figured out, but I think the nature of this conversation and this tech huddle is just sharing experiences. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been grappling with.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, when I spoke to you the other day, I think it was the first real sort of talk around the meeting. You had, I think it was about 5:30 in the evening, and you were just back to back with meetings the whole day. It was, and I think you brought up an important point there, is that you didn't, before we had time to drive to the next meeting or to walk to the next meeting. I know with our clients in the financial world, I could go down, meet someone for a coffee. And that was awesome, just 5 minutes or 10 minutes, having a little coffee and then a walk to the next session. But now I just feel like it's all just back to back, and it can actually be totally exhausting. And I'm finding that personally is that, and also just to find my space at home. I mean, we open the chat now, and to find the room where you can just call your office, and then you need to move around. There's homeschooling, then there's load shedding, as Rafiwe said. I mean, we didn't expect that to happen, but I suppose we should have. And then, there's load shedding, then you're running around trying to get your house sorted out. You're buying a UPS. Does the UPS work? How does this thing work? How long are we going to be load shedded for? There's the stress of trying to keep our businesses going. And then just with the lockdown, and now we've got load shedding on top of all of that. So I must say my anxiety was definitely amplified, and I think it's quite an appropriate terminology. But the one thing that I'm really enjoying about all of this is that I can still wear my pajama pants, guys. That's been really a positive for me, is that I can look really good on the top, but I'm actually, got the pajama pants going. Sorry, a bit of an overshare, but there's this kind of like feeling that I'm still relaxed. The top part of me is stressed, and oh well, I won't say what the rest of it is, but no, it's a strange time, really. But yeah, there's pros and cons, really, aren't there?
Yeah, and I guess with everything as it is, with everything in life, there's a balance. It's a tale of two cities, the best of times and the worst of times. And as I look in the chat, a lot of people are echoing a lot of things that we've spoken about offline, but also people are echoing just new struggles that they're facing as it relates to navigating the digital world. And, load shedding has obviously made this next level for us. And Mark, I know for you, I remember our first Zoom session, and we were at the APSA office in Sandton, and COVID had just hit, and we had no way of really knowing how to navigate. And, fast forward a few months later, we're experts. I think we certainly are doing this. What do you like about online meetings? I mean, certainly there are the disadvantages. What do you like about online meetings, and what don't you like? I know you can wear your pajama pants. You have that stunning jacket from Oriental Plaza that you grace us with now and then. And, there's a lot that is to be missed from face-to-face facilitation, but there are definite advantages that you've touched briefly on. Could you expound on some of the good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Rafiwe, like, I could never have imagined. I think, as lockdown happened for Mindful Revolution, we've always been going into a boardroom situation, live facilitation. We were introduced to the online platform, not as much as Dan has been doing. He's very experienced for years and years, but we had certain clients that were using online. I know I did some work with Coca-Cola, and we had the Blue Jeans set up, and that was awesome because we could connect with different people in PE and all over the country. And then, so we had a taste of it, and then the lockdown happened, and I think initially I thought, oh my gosh, there goes my entire livelihood. I'm going to be a house husband, and I'm going to be the one who looks after my boy, and my wife will, be the breadwinner. And I had all those thoughts going through my mind. And within a week, we were up and running on the digital platform. And it was like, holy moly, it was like what do they call it? A Corona coaster. And, and then before I knew it, I was facilitating to daily, a group of about 120 to 130 people daily, just 30-minute mindfulness sessions, de-stress sessions to prepare people for the day ahead. And it turned out to be a remarkable success. And I've never, as you said, it's kind of the best of times and the worst of times, is that part of me was like really stressed, really anxious. And another part of me was rejoicing. And I was feeling like, my word, I mean, if I was to run a session daily for 130 people, where in the world would that happen? So it's just really opened up such a platform for us to be of such benefit to so many more people. And I just, and also the gratitude that comes from others saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, just sort of lifted me up, and feeling connected. And it's a weird feeling because you do feel that connection. There were people WhatsApping me that were on those groups, and we had like a little online family, you could say. And I really, really, really rejoiced in that. And I rejoice in this as well. Being with you and Dan and having all our friends on today would never be possible. It's opened up opportunities for us to connect with people overseas, to extend our services. So I don't want to sound as if I'm, I know there's a lot of people that are really struggling, and that it's a worse time for them. And I'm very sensitive to that as well. And I understand it's a difficult time, and this is a really difficult time. We are not. I like the saying, we are not just working from home. We are working from home during a crisis. And there's two very different. There's two really different sentences there. They're really, really not the same. But just the connection I've been really enjoying. Rafiwe, I don't handle having large sessions and people are not being mindful of their digital etiquette.
Yeah, just because we're in a crisis, it doesn't mean that we have to be the crisis ourselves. So, we have to mindfully navigate through the virtual existence. And Dan, I see Heidi says that one of the things that she struggles with is if her camera is off and her mic is muted, and someone else is highlighting as a benefit, that online meetings feel more structured and focused for them than face-to-face meetings. Dan, do you think that people are showing up well in the virtual platform? Is there more that we can do? Is there less that is required of us? How can we show up better? How can we be wonderful Zombies, as they are now referring to us?
Zombies, I like that. So look, there's been phenomenal engagement in the chat. So thank you to all of you who have been posting some of your challenges and thoughts and insights. There's great ideas. And I think I actually want to touch on that for a moment, because I think if we were presenting to the 244 odd people in the audience right now in person, I think it would be difficult to collate all of that feedback to actually make it as inclusive and like one big conversation. So I think, Rafu, you asked Mark the question of what do you like about Zoom meetings, and this is something that I love, that you can get opinions and questions and thoughts and comments and perspectives from so many more people, whereas in the training room or in the auditorium, the mic has to go and get passed around, and maybe you'll handle 3 or 4 questions. So I think it's wonderful. And I want to touch on what Estelle said, which is a negative point, is not being able to read body language in meetings. And I think that is the case if one turns one's camera off and is just kind of hiding behind a square block in Zoom for the entire meeting. And I have come across a number of people doing that, and maybe people are somewhat shy or feeling uncomfortable because they're in there. They're not as confident in their pajama pants as Mark is, and maybe they're not so comfortable with their setting, their background. Maybe their room is a mess, or they're in their bedroom or their kitchen. And there's background noise, so they mute themselves. So it's obviously very difficult to build connection, build trust, build rapport, and have a compassionate conversation and a meaningful conversation if one person's camera is on and the rest of the people, their camera's off. So I think when it comes to showing up to a meeting, I think step one is think about having your camera on, because that will just obviously help. And I think when it comes to body language, something that I've learned, and I was privileged to have a Zoom conversation with Simon Sinek in June, planning for that webinar that we held an interview with him. And one thing that I noticed is in that initial 20-minute conversation, there were about 4 of us in the meeting, but Simon was listening intently, and I could see him nodding his head, even though he wasn't going, yeah. He wasn't actually saying anything, but you could see he was making eye contact. He was paying attention. He was fully focused. He was he was giving verbal cues that he was listening and really paying attention and really getting you. And since then, I've attempted to make that a habit as well. So, I mean, I think maybe you've noticed that when I wasn't talking, I was on mute, but I was trying to really tune in and get rid of distractions. I've got my 2 screens here, so I kind of do glance there, but just really showing up. And I think, something else, I mean, I'm a big Simon Sinek groupie, so I've got lots of little quirks from him over the years. But he talks about how, if you're sitting in a meeting with somebody with your phone on the table, that's not really ideal, and even if you turn it over, still, like he encourages people to put their phone away and to be 100% fully present and engaged in meetings. And this was pre-COVID. And now during COVID, I think the same, principles apply, because you're on screen, you're talking, this is all we've got at the moment. We can't really practically see each other in person. So it really, it's highly effective and rewarding if one does really show up, turn on the camera, show body language, smile, show acknowledgement, and make the other person really feel heard. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I must agree with you, Dan. I had a really interesting chat to a good friend of mine yesterday, who was saying that she had a performance appraisal, which is probably like one of the biggest meetings that you could have of the year. And she showed up and she turned on her camera, and her manager that was doing the appraisal actually never turned their camera on, and was giving her this sort of performance review, which is quite a sensitive thing, but with the camera off. And I understand there's bandwidth issues and things like that, but I think showing up is so vitally important. I mean, Dan, I'm looking at you, and the lighting is awesome. Your background is amazing. I look at Rafi, she looks amazing. The background's great. I try my best to shine some light on my face, and I mean, I know it's a difficult platform for us, but it's really how can we show up? How can we make more connection? I love what you said about Simon Sinek, about that sort of, and you feel that mindfulness, you feel cared for, you feel nurtured when somebody is acknowledging what you're saying. But when we're on a platform in a meeting, and I know this is a big platform, but when we're in a small meeting where there's 5 or 6 or 7 people and most of those people's cameras are off, you feel like you're talking to yourself a lot of the time. You feel a little bit alone, and then you feel anxious because we're not seeing the little nuances or the person, the non-verbal, the little sigh or the rolling of the eyes or the little nod and the smile. And you never know if you're on the right track or if you're going completely wayward. And I feel that this is what's making me personally anxious, is I never know if I'm winning or losing because I can't see what's happening with the people that I'm communicating with, And I just think of that my friend and going through that appraisal and how terribly upset or stressful that must be, where her manager can't even turn on the camera, and that just seems to be the norm. Is this the norm, or can we change this? It seems to be the norm, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's important, Mark. I mean, Dan noted that he spoke about things like focus and nodding intently, which I see that you were doing. And focus is a key component of what we teach as mindfulness facilitators. But I think another key component is non-judgment and being open-minded and open-hearted. And as much as we can appreciate that bandwidth issues, it's important to have the video on. It's true for people that bandwidth issues are a challenge. So here's my suggestion, and maybe you guys can help me to expound on this. To add to our virtual etiquette, how can we communicate, maybe just ahead of the meeting or in the meeting, that I will maybe not have my video on because I've got bandwidth issues. I will maybe put myself on mute because my children are in the background and doing homeschooling. I think what we're really experiencing so many ways is the willingness of community, and that can happen when we create more spaces for connection by communicating. How can we communicate better? How can we help ourselves to be more open-minded, more open-hearted, and receptive to people on the other side and the challenges that they may be experiencing?
Yeah, I fully agree with you, and I think it is important to acknowledge the data limitations and challenges that people have. And as you say, maybe just to be upfront in the lead up to a meeting, to tell a person, or what might work is 2 minutes of video on, just as an initial face-to-face conversation, and then to say kindly, I'm going to turn my video off, and I'm happy for you to do the same. And then it will be more like a typical telephone call, which can still be very effective. The telephone's been around for decades, and it is an effective means of communication. So I think it's just more when people are turning their video off voluntarily, where there's no data issue, and yeah, I think it's quite a big one. I think we are social beings, and we crave that human interaction, and it's not like being with a person, giving them a high five or shaking their hand or a hug, but seeing them on Zoom can, I know a number of people now I know very, very well that I've only actually just met, within lockdown. I've never actually seen them in the flesh, but I feel like I really know them. I feel like I know them, I like them, I trust them. And those are people locally and abroad. And Adrian, Mark, I actually echo what you said about how this whole virtual world and lockdown really can be viewed in many ways as an opportunity. There are many silver linings, and it really does open up the world and bring the world a whole lot closer together. I've got so many people I've been talking to in Cape Town that, it's like, and that I've never met, and around Africa and around the world. So it really does open up a really big audience. And also just something I love about online meetings is the fact that, obviously you don't need to sit in traffic. You don't need to budget that time, that stress of an accident or traffic, and then you're late. We're working from home, and but obviously that's got that downside of that always on. But I think that with purposeful, intentional, mindful meetings, where we think about the start time and the end time, the actual duration of the Zoom meeting. For example, if it's going to be relatively brief, set it for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour if needs be, and make every effort to show up early. You know, we spoke about showing up. I think it's really, really important. Again, I'm by no means perfect, but I try and make it a habit to show up a few minutes early for a Zoom meeting. And you know, just to start on time, to respect the time, to respect the space, to respect the other person, and to have a clear agenda. Something that is also quite effective is if one can put in a few bullet points into the calendar invite. And something I try to do as well is to put that 5 or 10 minute reminder before in the calendar invite, so it'll remind on my side and remind on the other meeting participant side. A couple minutes before, little reminder, get in on time, start promptly. One can have that, you know, check in and small talk and talking about the weather and family and COVID for a few minutes, but then at least, you know, we can get to business without too much delay.
Absolutely, Dan. So, you know, it just reminds me with someone said, Marion said, those reminders, Dan, are a real lifesaver, and they absolutely are, Marion. Another lifesaver for me that I use as like a mantra is the mindfulness definition by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, who really popularized mindfulness in the 80s. And he says that mindfulness can be cultivated by paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, and in the present moment. So we're not just talking about, you know, having your eyes closed and chanting or whatever, but we're talking about a meeting, you know, to cultivate your attention by paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment. And then, as Rafiwe said earlier, 3 attitudes of non-judgment, non-reactivity, and open-heartedness. So as I go into meetings, that for me is just sort of there because I'm practicing it as much as I can, the sort of non-judgmental, oh, well, that person's got their camera off. Does it mean that they are disengaged? No, maybe they're just having a bad hair day, or they're having connectivity issues, as was said. Non-judgment, non-reactivity to how the meeting's going, etc., and open-heartedness, that I can accept whatever's going again. So they've just asked me to say it again. Mindfulness can be cultivated by paying attention on purpose in the present moment, and by cultivating 3 attitudes of non-judgment, open-heartedness, and non-reactivity. And Rafiwe was talking around checking in. Where you mentioned that, Rafiwe?
I think I did. I did mention checking in, Mark, and I think something that is so crucial about checking in, it relates to a question that we've just received. And I'm trying to find it, but someone was saying, how can we assist anxiety? You know, how do we overcome anxiety? And checking in for me is one of the best ways to do it. I'm not talking about checking in the airport, but just really being with yourself and seeing where you are. And I know that you are the master of anxiety, Mark, because it's something that you would have to attend to on a daily basis in your own life. You know, so I think, what tools can we share with people to really help them to alleviate anxiety, to work themselves through it, to have a conversation, to confront it, as opposed to fighting it? Because sometimes we fight anxiety with anxiety. And before I ask you to answer that question, Dan, are people craving more connection, and is the digital platform working for them? So Mark, first you, and then Dan, if you can answer that. Are people craving more connection? Do you find that?
Me first, right? Okay, so yeah, we are desperately craving connection. You know, human beings are social creatures. We miss each other terribly. We get angry when the government tells us we can do this or we can't do that, because we feel as though we've lost control of our lives, and we've lost control of our family relationships, and especially if one of our family members gets sick. We are deeply craving connection. And so that's what we try and do. And my role as a mindfulness facilitator has really been less about leading people into long practices and more about trying to create a connection within teams, within organizations, whether it's 200 or 300 people, or whether it's just 6 people in a team. So we have certain ways to create those connections, and we've had a lot of fun around that, of creating those connections. But really, I don't know if I can share, maybe Dan, just jump to you to answer that question.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. It goes without saying, we are craving connection. You know, we miss getting together with friends, with colleagues, talking business, talking life, talking, you know, just having that interaction. So, you know, I mean, obviously it's out of our control at this point, and we need to be responsible as people, as communities, as the country, as the world. And I think we just have to do our best to view it as an opportunity and to create those connections through the screen. And yeah, I mean, there was a question which I just saw from Ed in the chat about people being negative at the moment about life, about the country, etc. And that is difficult, and that does bring one's energy down. And it is known, you know, that we become like the 5 people, I don't know how exactly it's worded, but the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And you might not be in a position right now today to choose exactly who your colleagues are because you're in a job or, you know, you're in a specific context. But I think as and when we have the choice, it's important and very valuable to be intentional about, you know, who we're spending our time with. You know, we only have a certain number of hours in the day, and I think there's also a need to spend that time with oneself. You know, just to be as intentional as possible about, you know, making time for people who bring your energy up, making time for people who are good listeners, you know, where you're on the same wavelength, and limiting the interactions with those people who might bring you down and just, you know, breed negativity. Yeah.
Absolutely. So true. That's such an important point, is to feed our souls, and from all these back-to-back meetings, to actually connect with a mentor or a dear friend and feel that connection. So really in our business, and Rafiwa said to me, I'm the king of anxiety. She's 100% right. I'm probably the most anxious person on this platform. You wouldn't know it because, well, ever since I was a young guy, I had panic attacks. I used to have 15 to 20 panic attacks a day. I have a mental health condition. So if I don't practice mindfulness, I move into that very amplified anxiety. And through the years of working on myself, I'm really happy to share some techniques that we do in meetings. So really how we start a meeting is just really connect with our breath for 3 deep breaths, or maybe we can just do a deep breath right now. Can we just stop for a minute and take a breath? So just sitting where we are, just breathing in through the nose if you can, just taking in a lovely deep inhalation. Exhale. Let's do that again. That's easy. Breathing in. Exhaling. And last one, breathing in through the nose. And just sigh the breath out. So you see, immediately that moves us from feeling a little bit anxious, feeling a bit upset, moving from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's how we start a meeting. And everyone can just calm down. You know, everyone can just relax. Then, as you said earlier, to detach from our devices and be focused, turn off the notifications, etc. And then the ways of checking in that we have is really to ask about, how's the weather today? You know, how's the internal weather? Are you feeling partly cloudy with scattered thunder showers? Are you sunny? Are you a tornado? I know there's a guy in the UK, Rob Stevenson, who checks in with his team. How are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Very simple, you know, but that's how they start their meetings. And Dan, I mean, I watched you a while ago, a couple of Sundays ago, where I think it was Ian Furr or you said that there's something about leadership, about being compassionate and still being of value to your clients, you know. And I'll never forget, it was such a wonderful thing. And as a leader, to be compassionate, as a team leader, we have mindful ambassadors or mindful champions who will facilitate a meeting and say, right, let's check in. Let's find out how are you feeling. Let's be more vulnerable about how we actually feel, rather than just be this, as Rafiwa said, a virtual reality. Let's try and be more human. How can we be more human? There was a lovely idea of taking a photograph of your environment and then posting that up. And why did you take this picture? We do something called Mind Flick. Rafiwa, myself, and Adrian Jacobs are getting to know each other through doing a little survey or a personality profile, and then we'll meet on Friday and discuss that. There's another platform called Menti. Have you heard of it, Dan?
I have heard of it, but tell us more.
Yeah, so Menti is just a website, menti.com, and you can go in there and you can check in anonymously. So if you are in a meeting and you want to hear how people are feeling, because it's maybe people are not, they're afraid to be vulnerable and to share if they're a 2 or a 3 out of 10. Then you can go on Menti and you can ask the question. You log in on Menti, you get a passcode, and it's anonymous. So I can get a feeling for my team. Say I've got 10 or 20 people in my team. How are my team really doing? They might say on Teams or in chats on Zoom, I'm doing fine, but actually they're not. So, and Menti I can get an honest feedback, a check-in from my colleagues or from my employees of how they really are doing. And if they're not doing great, then it's really up to me to do something about it. So it's just a couple of interesting little check-in examples.
Yeah. So a couple of points on that, Mark. I think you've mentioned so many practical solutions or practical tools. So I think it will be very worthwhile when we send out the link via email to the recording of this, which will be available on YouTube. We'll send some of those resources, because I think people need practical resources and techniques to help them with this tech overwhelm, this tech anxiety, this disconnect, this loneliness, isolation, general levels of anxiety, because it's very real and it's very overwhelming, I think. So I think we should definitely send some of those resources. I've got some as well. That was my main response to your. I had a couple of other things that I wanted to say, and I've lost my train of thought. Rafiwa?
Let me jog you.
Yeah.
Let me lead you in the right direction, because I'm a woman and I know how to give direction and follow. I think the more next I want. No, I don't multitask. Thank you. I'm wiser than that. But Dan, according to the World Health Organization, stress has been classified as the health epidemic of the 21st century. We talk coronavirus, but we also have the epidemic of stress. And, the general level of worry and unhappiness in the modern world is creating this epidemic of stress. And, we talk about the new normal as Mindful Revolution, we call it the brave new world, but stress is becoming a part of the new normal for people, and it's causing a decrease in productivity and health problems and all sorts of things. So not only is that challenging from a personal perspective as an individual, but there are leaders that are having to navigate this time with staff members that are not able to be resilient, because the realities are not only are people stressed by the normal things that used to stress us out, on top of that, a lot is happening. There's a lot of joblessness, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of death around us, which is the new reality. How can leaders navigate this time, and how can they influence connection in a way that is really productive? So, ensuring that people are productive, but ensuring also that there is a safe space for that productivity, and people aren't tapping into the dark side of resilience, which is being overly resilient to the point that you burn yourself out.
Yeah, look, these are great questions. And look, I'm going to refer once again to Simon Sinek, because I've been following him through this lockdown period and before that, and he does talk about the weekly huddle, which Mark, you mentioned, the Monday morning checking in with the team, and actually nothing to do with work, nothing to do with productivity. And he released a post a few weeks ago saying, you don't need to be fully 100% productive right now. Like, people are in all sorts of trouble and stress and overwhelm right now. So I think productivity is one way to make oneself feel better, like it's a healthy way of, knocking a few things off the to-do list in a similar way to going out for a jog or a walk, into nature, or stopping and taking breaths. I think it's, or connecting with a loved one through a conversation. I think those are all things that can pick up our mood in a healthy way. And I think, Mark, you also touched on, I think sometimes in a team, people will speak up. Like here, we've had so many people speaking up, which is amazing. On the Zoom call, but there will be people who are shy and prefer, in a team setting, would rather open up in a one-on-one with their manager or a trusted colleague. And I think it's really important, especially as a leader, to be in touch with that and to really reach out, to show that care, and I guess to default to kindness, kindfulness, compassion, and empathy at a time like this. I think the leaders that are really showing up in the world, there's been a lot of publicity around the female leaders, the Prime Minister of New Zealand and some of the Scandinavian countries and Germany. And, I can speak for, in terms of Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister, she's shown absolutely amazing compassion, empathy, and kindness to the New Zealand public. And, regular check-ins. She does a Facebook Live once a week, at least. She over communicates, and she shows a lot of compassion and empathy. She's not trying to be this bulletproof leader. So I think it's really important to show that vulnerability, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel lonely right now. I think we're all feeling this corona coaster. I'm going to practice that a bit.
I'm putting my hand up because I know how to practice virtual etiquette, and I would like to interrupt Mark before he speaks. We have a very interesting question from Noel, and Dan, this leads directly from what you were saying, that compassion, that empathy. And Noel says that we always have a check-in at the start of our meetings. However, at times someone checks in with something very heavy and perhaps even bursts into tears. In this case, what should one do? Do you acknowledge them and carry on? Mark, what do we do in these situations?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I won't say it's a tough question because, as Dan was saying, it's a time for compassion and empathy, and it's a time for us to connect more to our humanness. And I think that's something that the pandemic has shown us, is that we are human beings. We're not machines. And maybe before we thought we were just these productive machines. And now we know that we can transmit this virus to each other, which means that we are flesh and blood, and that this virus, that's how this virus survives. And there's no discrimination as to how it moves. And even though, some of my family members have been sick with it, I just feel extremely connected to the rest of the human race right now through the virus. And I know it sounds a bit strange, but it's actually quite a positive thing, because I've never felt more connected because of the virus to the human race as I do now, because I know that we all can suffer. We are all prone to illness, whereas before it was just, meeting after meeting and you just kind of like tunnel vision. And now I feel so much more human. And if someone like that in a meeting cries and breaks down, for me personally, I'll acknowledge that. And we ran a series for 2 weeks for First Rand. It was called Holding Space. And we also did it in a Mindful Revolution capacity. And it was really just about giving people the opportunity to be heard, to cry. Geez, I cried every single day. I mean, I had tears rolling down my face. My wife said to me, "And now you're crying again?" And I was just I won't say an emotional wreck. I was crying because of my humanity. And I find it very beautiful that someone can be vulnerable, that someone can be honest about how they feel, and that we can provide support for each other. And if it feels uncomfortable for you, then just sit with that feeling of discomfort, because it's a human feeling. And let that feeling of discomfort perhaps move into a feeling of compassion and empathy, which is different from a feeling of pity. That's just how I feel. Dan?
Yeah, no, I actually want to touch on and just build on what you've been saying and touch on Gary's comment in the chat about this, the compassion and the care needs to be real, and it needs to be authentic. It can't be phony, it can't be fake. People will pick up on that. And I think leaders have a responsibility to be genuine, to be real, to be authentic. If you're not authentically caring about your people, are you really deserving to be in that position of leadership, in charge or in people's charge? I think we need to tap into our authentic compassion, our authentic humanity. It definitely, we can't be acting and putting on a show, because people will see through that facade very, very quickly.
And I think we need to be vulnerable ourselves right from the get-go, because that just opens that up for everybody else. Say, guys, I'm the leader, and this is how I'm feeling today. I'm a 2, I'm a 3, and that's honest. I'm not putting on a brave face. I'm just putting on a real face. And I think that's the mindfulness, kindfulness thing that we've been talking about.
Absolutely, Mark. And I would like to be vulnerable with you and say that when you shared that story about Grant not responding to your WhatsApp message for 2 days, I completely identified with him, because I'm the kind of person that doesn't check my messages. I don't like constant phone calls and interruptions. I really like my space, and it's nothing personal. And I know that a lot of people are taking a lot of things personally, whilst people are just finding ways to manage themselves and manage their lives. And I guess it can be quite scary. Another thing, I mean, you said multitasking. The reason I don't like to have my WhatsApp on and answering phone calls, and because I find it impossible to multitask. It just takes so much of my energy. How can we do this better? How can we answer Mark's WhatsApp message and still pay attention to what we need to do? What can we do better?
So, Mark, if I can jump in here. So something that works well for me is batching. So allocating time in the day to WhatsApp, responding to WhatsApp messages, texts, voice notes, etc., and not being perpetually distracted and having my attention fragmented by constantly feeling obliged to respond straight away. I think if somebody calls me, or if someone WhatsApps but really needs to get hold of me, they'll call me. And if I can't talk because I'm on a Zoom call, I might see my phone ringing, but I've actually personalized some of those quick responses on phone calls to say, I'm on a Zoom call, I'll call you after. And allocating that time for callbacks, for responses to emails, to WhatsApps, that's definitely helped me. On this note, there's a great TED Talk that I watched recently. It's been viewed about 7 million times by Cal Newport, and he's the author of Deep Work and Digital Minimalism. And the TED Talk is actually entitled Why You Should Quit Social Media. And I haven't done that. I haven't quit Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, but he puts together some really interesting articles, some really interesting points, and an argument against social media, and just putting into perspective the fact that, our phones are very distracting, they are addictive, and they typically fragment our attention, and prevent us from doing that deep work that is really meaningful and really creates value in today's economy. So I definitely recommend that you give that a watch. I will post that into the chat now. So I think what I've done as well, which has helped me significantly for the last 3 or so months, almost since day one of lockdown, is an autoresponder, delayed response on my emails with resources and links, because I'm just not getting to my emails within half an hour or two. I'm checking it maybe twice a day. And the autoresponder says my response might be slightly delayed. I'll get back to you shortly, but in the meantime, here are some helpful resources. This link, that website, that recording. That's a really nice way, because people will get that instantaneously, and most of the queries will be answered. So there's also that option on WhatsApp for Business. If you have a WhatsApp for Business, you can create autoresponders. And I think that just helps, and maybe also just to be mindful of, those dreaded blue ticks. I've got them, and the last seen at on WhatsApp. I haven't deactivated that, but I think it works for some people, that to prevent that you've read a message and now people can see the 2 blue ticks, and then people are getting anxious. So I think it's important just to think around that as well. And, you know, I think on the flyer for this event, we said something about technology does whatever you want it to do. And also, like, kind of on that note, technology has the ability to control us, or we can control technology. And I think it's so important to be cognizant and to create habits where we're the one in control. We're the one allocating time to different tasks and responses. And for example, I mean, he talks about in digital minimalism, you know, putting your phone to sleep, disconnecting. And I can tell you, like, I did that successfully last night. I don't do it every night, but like when you disconnect from your screen from 7 or 8 or 9 p.m., if possible, it makes a world of difference to one's calmness, frame of mind, and actually sleep and overall happiness.
Great. So guys, on that note, Dan, I have to disconnect. I do need to join another meeting, and I want to have my virtual manners and etiquette in check and arrive on time. And so I leave everyone in the capable hands of these two very young gentlemen. And I wish you a wonderful day further.
Thank you, Rafael. It's been great. It's been a privilege. Take care. We'll chat to you soon.
Amazing. Thank you. Dan, should we open up to any questions that our guests have for us? How do you normally do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's been so many comments and feedback and questions coming through into the chat, which we can look at over the next few minutes. And also, if you have specific questions, it makes our lives a bit easier if you actually post them into the Q&A section. So if you want to type up a question or copy and paste into the Q&A, we'll be able to see them all there. Duduzi is talking about Cal Newport's great book called Deep Work. Check it out as it covers. Yeah, I'm actually going to copy and paste that. If you do want to post any kinds of resources or links or ideas that will be useful to everyone else on the call, there's still 220 people here. Please post it to all panelists and attendees, as I've just done, and as Marion Abbott did, with a thank you to all panelists and attendees, so that everybody can benefit from that. Mark, have there been any questions in the Q&A or in the chat that have caught your attention?
There's one from Jenny that's just popped up. In today's time, would it be rude to still expect other respects working hours 8 to 5? Jenny, I think that it's healthy for us to create boundaries, you know, and if you're working an 8 to 5 day, that's normal. And I find that a lot of people are suffering from fatigue in lockdown, more so than when we were not in lockdown, because of the back-to-back meetings. And a lot of the back-to-back meetings are because the managers and the leaders are going through their own crisis, where they're trying to keep everything together. And so they'll try and create more meetings. So it's a heavy leaning on leaders to be more mindful and be more introspective, because and then for us, I mean, you know, the sort of worker bees is to say, listen, I have respect for myself. I've got kindfulness for myself, and I'm not going to be permanently on. You know, I'm not going to be permanently available. I'm going to create boundaries, and those boundaries, I'm going to say, I'll you know, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and I think that's fair. I really do.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's, you know, we've touched on this point so many times during this session about intention, purposefulness in one's life and one's diary at the moment. It's just so important, because the lines can be so blurred when we're working from home and we're juggling everything. And I think it really does take effort, but I think it can be exceptionally rewarding, you know, if one creates those boundaries, those pockets of time, time for work, time for family, time for friends, time for oneself, time for eating, time for mindfulness, meditation. And I think the first step is to be aware of that, and then to start creating those habits. And yeah, I mean, I had days, especially towards the beginning of lockdown, where I was on until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's just unsustainable, you know. Yeah. I think it's just so important to constantly be asking oneself, looking at, introspecting and recalibrating, you know, even if it's, whether it's every day or once a week. I can tell you what works exceptionally well for me as well, to alleviate some of the general anxiety and the tech anxiety, the COVID lockdown anxiety, is a 1-day Sabbath. a technology Sabbath. So I am Jewish, and Jews observe the Sabbath from Friday evening until Saturday night. I'm not a fully observant Jew, but I love the idea of disconnecting from technology for that period of time and just really reconnecting with oneself, reading a book, going for a walk, connecting with family. I think that does the world of good. It's like a mini holiday once a week. I think that is really, really effective.
I mean, a very famous Jewish man, Albert Einstein, said, I believe that the abdominal deterioration of ethical standards stems primarily from the mechanization and depersonalization of our lives. He wrote this to a letter to his friend Otto Julius Berger in 1948. He said, a disastrous byproduct of science and technology. I mean, that was a forecast of note, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I've got, just on the subject of social media and the smartphone effect and the phone addiction, I've got a short YouTube video that I actually watched yesterday, which I found quite useful just to put into perspective and raise a bit more awareness of how phones and how apps are designed. And yeah, I've posted that link in the chat as well.
And I would also suggest turn off all notifications for emails. You know, I think that's something that Microsoft is also working on, a mindful version, I believe, of look how you sneeze so mindfully, Dan.
It was the combo, the mute and the elbow.
That is impressive. Oh my word.
It's the COVID sneeze.
You are walking the talk there, hey?
Thank you, Marion.
Yes, bless you. I'm glad a lot of good comments coming through about how people have really enjoyed the session and how they've benefited. Yeah, so just to create that space, I mean, every hour, if you can give yourself a few minutes and when you give yourself a few minutes, leave the phone and the social media, the news, go outside, take your shoes off if you can, you know, feel the grass underneath your feet, sit in the sun, enjoy a cup of tea, feel the sun on your face. Winter sun is just the best. Those are really, really proper breaks, and you're doing yourself amazing resilience exercises for your brain by doing so. The social media and the news is actually just bringing us down at the end of the day. And there's a time for it. You know? There's a time for it. But all the time, is that how we take our breaks? Reconsider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to maybe allocate once a day to kind of check in with the news for 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes, check in with the main stories of where are we. You know, I like to be cognizant of the daily numbers of, you know, in terms of COVID, but not to obsess over it. So I think it's important to catch oneself if, you know, you become obsessive of news articles and developments and politics, and can really drive one crazy. There's a few good questions coming through in the chat. Noel is saying, is it considered rude to look around, or should one maintain eye contact throughout the meeting? So I think people can pick up when you're busy doing something else, or you're checking your phone, or your mind's not really there, you're busy, someone else has just walked past, and you know, so I think it would be crazy to firstly, if I'm making eye contact with Mark over here, I'm looking at Mark's face now, then I'm not looking at the camera. So I think it's important to also be aware that, you know, if you are presenting in a webinar format with a large audience, try as much as you can to make eye contact with the actual camera, because then people watching will feel like, you know, we're actually making eye contact and really connecting. So I wouldn't say it's rude to look around, or, you know, and I think just also to touch on Zoom fatigue, I think a major reason for that, Mark, you were actually saying this morning, is also the fact that our camera's on the screen. So we often find ourselves checking ourselves out and seeing what we look like, and finding a wrinkle, or finding a gray hair, or, you know, like quite self-conscious. And that can also be quite emotionally exhausting.
It is totally. I find it very exhausting looking at myself a lot of the day. And you're also judging ourselves. Oh, gosh, you know, the wrinkle, the gray hair, whatever. But also the multi-split screen. I think another tip would be just to try and put on speaker view, so that you're not looking at everyone's face at the same time. That's also very taxing on the brain. So just one speaker view, even your own image, if somehow minimize that and really just focus on the main speaker. But I love what you're saying about looking at the camera. Another thing is, if we're multitasking and doing different things, that's also really bringing our energy down. You know, you got to think the brain uses 20% of the body's energy. So if you're making your brain work harder by multitasking, you're going to feel more exhausted throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Noel actually just clarified what he was talking about there. I think what he was meaning is if he's talking and maybe looking to the side or looking up and thinking, I think that's normal, that's human, because one would do that in a face-to-face interaction. So I think more what's relevant to actually watch out for is, you know, checking your emails while you're on a Zoom call talking to somebody. And I sometimes catch myself. I've got WhatsApp there and I'm kind of got one eye there. We're not perfect. You know, it's really not a case of perfection. It's just a case of creating those habits and that awareness. Yeah, but great question, Noel. Thank you. Marion's asking you a question, Mark. At work, one can avoid negativity. How do we do this online?
To avoid negativity from your colleagues, or
yeah, by the sounds of it, yeah.
Okay. It's like dodging bullets. I just find, Marion, just to go back to those mindful attitudes, for me it's quite simple: non-reactivity, open-heartedness, and non-judgment. It sounds simple. It's the hardest thing in the world to practice. So like if someone shoots bullets at me, you know, in a difficult situation, to catch oneself, like Viktor Frankl, the famous psychologist, said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Now, can we catch ourselves? We experience a negative outburst or someone else's negativity before we react. Can we find a space? And in that space lies my response and then my growth and my freedom. So I can choose how I respond rather than a knee-jerk reaction, which is very unmindful. So it's a difference between being on autopilot and by being mindful. So we need to practice more mindfulness techniques of presence and introspection so that we're aware. Chade Menteng from Google, he's the mindfulness coach. He says, when you develop a clear awareness, it's like HD definition. You can see that anger coming, you know, and there it is, I can see it. Whereas if you're dull and unmindful, you can't see it, and then all of a sudden you're angry, you know. So that really helps. So I can see my anger coming from a distance, and I can catch myself. You know, our parents used to tell us when we were kids, count to 10. That's a very mindful thing to do before you say and do something, isn't it?
So Mark Rafilwe was actually on a panel a few months ago with me and with a few other panelists, Ian Furr, and through the South African Jewish Report. And yeah, you were there, and she mentioned SOBER. Can you tell us a bit more about SOBER? I think it's a great acronym. Great talk.
SOBER. Well, I think that's Rafilwe uses that one quite a lot. Let me see if I can pull it up. It's pretty cool. I don't really know it's offhand.
So maybe we can piece it together between the two of us. I think S stands for stop. O is for
I remember it now. I remember it now.
Zanele is being our assistant there as well.
So it's stop, observe, breathe, expand, and respond. So that stands for SOBER. It's SOBER. So just kind of stop what you do, observe what's around you, how you feel, your feelings, etc. Breathe through it, and then expand your awareness, you know, to the room. Have a more of an open awareness to the situation. Is everyone seeing it like I'm seeing it, or is it just me? You know, so expand it to everybody else's understanding, and then respond rather than react. Yeah. So that was SOBER. I remember it now. Stop, observe, breathe, expand, and respond. That's it.
Fantastic. Yeah, and Marion loves it. Leora helped us with that. Mel also, so great. Thank you, guys. I think that's an excellent thing to remember. Just to stop, observe, take one's time, and get some perspective.
Well, we are sober, aren't we, Dan? I mean, we're in rehab.
Yeah, correct.
Not locked down.
Something else that I mentioned to you guys earlier is I don't know if I mentioned to you this morning, but I think it's really important to help with tech anxiety. Is I've seen so many people with their desktop on their computer so busy, so cluttered. And my analogy is your desktop on your computer is comparable to your desk where you're working, your tabletop counter. And it's that image of of piles of paper everywhere, strewn all over the show, different documents, different stationery, things all over the show. And I think even something like that, like I've gotten into a habit of saving nothing on my desktop. My desktop is 100% clean. I think the only thing there is the recycle bin in the top left corner. So, and I think it's a great thing, because what it means is that the rest of my hard drive might not be fully organized. I might not have it in control 100%, but at least it's not giving me that anxiety when I open up my laptop and I see documents and clutter everywhere. So I think it means that things will be filed, whether it's in documents or Dropbox or downloads or wherever it is, but at least things have more of a place. So I think that can help to alleviate some anxiety as well. And maybe you could do that with your phone as well. Instead of apps all over the show, start creating folders. Be intentional about, these are my productivity apps, these are my sport apps, these are my mindfulness apps, these are, etc. I think it will just create a little bit more peace of mind and peace of technology.
Dan, I actually have a mindfulness practice, where you close your eyes and you imagine that whatever thoughts, emotions, or feelings that arise in you, that you just sort of put them into a folder for later. So you're just focusing on your breath, and then all this stuff starts arising, and you go, okay, I see all of you, but I'm just putting you in a folder. I'm going to open that folder, I'm going to drag you into there, and we'll deal with that later. So it's also helping you to just detach and detox from the storyline, from the thoughts, emotions, etc. Nothing wrong with them. It's just having the power to choose, as Viktor Frankl said, to create a space between our thoughts and between our storylines too. So exactly like you clean up your desktop, we can clean up our mental desktop.
Yeah. And another desktop to clean up, I think, is one's inbox. I've seen people with literally thousands of unread emails, and in multiple different folders, and it's not a thing that you can snap your fingers and clean it all up. But I think it's something very important to be aware of. There is a concept called inbox zero, which is a philosophy and a methodology for maintaining your inbox, getting your inbox down to zero unread, by either doing or delegating or deciding or delaying. There's like 5 Ds, I think. Once again, and Mark, there's been a number of requests for all of your little gold nuggets, pearls of wisdom, quotes, etc., for you to share that, which we will be doing when we send out the recording. And maybe I'll share that inbox zero principle as well, because I find that a general underlying anxiety I find in myself when my inbox is a bit out of control, and I've got unreads and I've got flags and I'm just not really on top of things. So I think, Tim Ferriss in the 4-Hour Workweek, actually years ago when he wrote that, he talked about the autoresponder on your email, and he talked about checking your emails twice a day, for example, at 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. So late morning and late afternoon, letting it build up, and then having a process where you sit for an hour or whatever it is, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, and you clear through everything, and you delegate, you decide, you flag, you make sure that you are on top of everything. And once again, it comes down to practice and habits.
Dan, do you know how many times people on average check their emails
Per day?
Yeah.
I'll take a flyer. Maybe 20.
110.
Wow.
110. And they say that they did the research, Gloria Mark, a team at the University of California, they said for maximum productivity, we should be checking our emails 4 times a day. 4. And so it's exactly what you're saying. But, how focused are we if we're checking our emails 110 times a day? And we're checking our phones 120 times a day on average.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important not to be hard on oneself. You know,
Yeah.
it's easy to say, oh, I just can never get it right, and I'm so distracted, and I'm this and I'm that, and you know, really to bash ourselves. And I think it's so important to be kind to oneself. It's a time for kindness and compassion to others, but also to oneself, that it is a tough time, it is challenging. And I think we've got to celebrate those little wins, create those little habits, do something that's a quick win that, you know, if you were about to check your mails or check your Instagram,
Yeah.
stop yourself and celebrate the fact that, hold on, you put that aside and you're creating new habits.
Sure. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to really unpack more of what mindfulness actually means, and to dispel any myths, you know, that people might have about what real mindfulness is all about. It's very, very neuroscience based.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for everybody watching, we still have close to 150 people watching, which is fantastic. Anybody who wants to find out more and to connect with the team at Mindful Revolution, Mark, maybe you just pop some contact info, the website, email address, contact number in the chat. And the team is based in Joburg and Cape Town. I was getting confused between where everybody is, but they do great work. They do amazing workshops and interventions and exercises for individuals and teams to help them to become more mindful and present. Lydia's asking if there will be a recording of the session. Absolutely. We do record all of our webinars and it will be available on YouTube. We actually prefer the YouTube recording than the Zoom recording, because what's quite interesting to notice is a Zoom recording only records speaker view. So you actually can't see the 2 or 3 or 4 people on screen at the same time. You only see the speaker view, whereas with YouTube, it shows whatever view the host has. So if we're chatting side by side now with me and Mark, you'll see both of us talking to each other. So that video, that YouTube recording will be made available. We'll send that out together with a whole host of quotes and resources and links and ideas that we've discussed today.
Amazing.
Okay, Mark, you have posted that to all panelists, your email address. So maybe you just want to post that, copy and paste it to all panelists and attendees. Really fantastic feedback coming through in the chat. So thank you to everybody who tuned in and was present and very much a part of this conversation. We appreciate it. And we will continue to deliver very, very valuable content as much as possible during this difficult time. We actually have a WhatsApp group. We've got 5 of them, in fact, and I'm going to post, some of you might be part of that WhatsApp group. I'm going to post the link to join that WhatsApp group.
I've also put some of the quotes on as well, Dan, that people were asking for, some of those gems.
Yeah, great. Okay, let's just find the link for the WhatsApp group. Okay, WhatsApp is misbehaving at the moment. I've got it open here on my other screen, but it's not letting me copy that link. So what I will do is I will send it as part of the email, that if you want to stay on our email database and our WhatsApp database so that you can stay in touch and continue to be part of these conversations. Okay, so
Cool.
Mark, it's been fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for the collaboration and partnership on this.
Yeah, I just loved it. I mean, you like the Zoom rock star, so I've admired you from afar, and it's a great honor and a privilege to share the stage with you today, and to hear some of your wisdom. You know, you've also opened my eyes to a couple of new things that now I'm considering as well. So thank you for your wisdom. And if you ever want to join our Mindful Revolution team, the door's always open. But
Thank
you do
you.
a great job there.
Appreciate it. And look, I think we're getting such positive feedback here in the chat that clearly people have found this very valuable. And I think that's the main thing, that there's valuable ideas, valuable content, as well as connection during a time, as we know, that is very lonely and isolating. So I think these conversations are important, and it's good feedback, and the positive feedback means that we should definitely keep doing this.
Excellent. I agree, Dan. I think we've got a good thing going here.
Okay, so the time is 2:15. It has been absolutely wonderful being with you this afternoon. We will share the link to the recording as well as all those resources. So take care, look after yourself and look after others. Be present, be mindful, be balanced, be healthy and well, and we will chat to you soon. Take care.
Absolutely.